Okay, so Trent is with us this morning. Trent Ellingsen. Trent, good to see you this morning.
Thanks,
Thank
Judy.
you for being with us. Trent is the founder of Atlas Alpha, a startup that was in our incubator program for 2 years, and won AngelCon 2020 in June of this year. So Trent won $125,000 from an investor group local to San Luis Obispo. And we're here to get an update on where he's at, what's going on, how his experience was with AngelCon. So we're going to go through all of that. Real quick, Zoom etiquette, please put all your questions in the Q&A feature, and please feel free to ask questions throughout the morning, throughout the coffee and conversation session, and I'll bring them up as we go. This is intended to be very conversational, and we want to get as much experience feedback from Trent as we can. So again, awesome to have you here with us, Trent, this morning. And just to remind you all, thank you to our sponsor, Maynard Cooper, corporate and securities law firm based in the Bay Area that is sponsoring all of our coffee and conversation sessions for the next 12 months. So we're really pleased to have them as our sponsor. So Trent, I'm going to ask you sort of out the door, for those people who aren't familiar with Atlas Alpha, can you give us basically your elevator pitch, update on what Atlas is doing, and and a little bit about how it all started and where you're at right now.
Sure. So the elevator pitch for the company as it is that it's a marketplace disguised as a social network. And the way we got here is kind of an interesting journey. And I'll describe what that actually looks like, the marketplace, in just a second. But the way we got to where we are now, I essentially went to Cal Poly as a software engineer and graduated in 2012, and then had a job as a software engineer for about 6 years. And 2 of those were software engineering manager. And I got all excited while I was at my job, and this was at MindBody, working with a friend on a fun iOS app. And I saw all this potential for making a business of my own, which I'd never thought about before. This was just a fun thing for myself. And when I charted out how much I could make through in-app purchases, I made an Excel sheet. I was making millions within like 3 years. And so I convinced my wife and some friends that I should leave my job and they should invest a little bit of money into what I was trying to do. And that launched me into making things for myself and trying to build a business. And what's interesting is I started off making this app for people who like a card game. And to market that, I thought I'll make some physical products and sell those because it's kind of correlated to the card game. The products I made, instead of marketing for the game that I designed in the iPhone app, those products actually sold a lot more. I was making $60 a month in in-app purchases and then $600 a month through this physical product, which was interesting. So I decided I'll just do that full time and shifted the business to making these physical play mats and things to play the card game that I was trying to support. And then I was making deals with artists and found one that was very unique and thought I should make a game, like my own custom game. And so I launched that on Kickstarter and made $8,000 a month and was seeing that that should be the business. And I shifted yet again. And then the final shift to where I am now was how I, again, was trying to market these card games by making a website to search up any card game that exists, any board game that exists, and discovered that this was a hugely underserved community. The board gaming industry has 10 billion per year typically, and the average spend for a board gamer is $600 to $1,200 every year on like 30-ish board games, and that blew my mind. And as a designer of board games and trying to publish them, I was competing with over 6,000 a year that launched. But if I could make a platform where they all compete against each other, that sounded a lot more opportune. And my specialty, my superpower was software engineering.
You found a way to intersect your expertise in, software development and this niche that you realized existed in the market, or there's a space for innovation.
Exactly. So I ended up pivoting several times to get to where I am. And now I call it a marketplace disguised as a social network because I have a database that's the most complete database of board games in the world. There's over 126,000 games from all time just logged in our database. And we connect that to a forum to talk about it. And it looks a lot like Reddit, where there's threaded conversations and you can react to things like you can on Facebook with the thumbs up and the heart and the laughing face and just talk about board games. But the special sauce is that it has that connection, because as I got into board games, I was lost. There's over 10 games that launch every day, so I'm instantly behind all the time. But as you're talking about it, it auto completes with the names of the games that you're trying to talk about and links to them, and you can see all the information about it in the conversation itself, which is super amazing for the user experience, but also from a business standpoint. On that page where you can find out about the game is all the prices, and I get affiliate sales, and that's been driving the business, because people who love games will come and talk about them, convince each other to buy them, and then buy them on the platform. So it's been a fun journey.
Trent, you went through, I mean, so those were like three, four pretty massive pivots along the way.
Yeah.
And it's not so much, I mean, you could say, oh, well, you were following the revenue, right? But at the end of the day, following the revenue, it's not just a question of following the money. It's also a question of that's where the demand was. So you were following demand and addressing the demand as you went along, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was essentially like, as if there's a vine that I knew that is the source of all things. I was just cutting off the branches that weren't working and pruning the ones that were.
Yeah. So you became, so just as a little sort of a self-promo here real quick, you became an SBDC client. And what was your biggest challenge prior to that? And how did, what did you learn from working with us? What were the elements that helped you move forward?
So at the moment I joined, I had just started working on this, the first version of the website that I built. And I've been having all this trouble trying to manufacture and publish board games because the unit economics were super terrible. And estimates for shipping, estimates for custom goods were much higher in actuality than the estimates. So I ended up losing money. So I was coming off of all this and trying to launch this board game website where, although I had built software for MindBody and knew how to scale, and I was part of the consumer team that did, I was there until they grew to about 2 million users. It was a different experience doing it all myself, because the engineering I've got a bigger handle on, but the marketing, that's the hardest part. And so I use the consultants quite a bit in terms of learning how to market well, and just even thinking, getting a framework of what it's like to market. It's not just paying Google or Facebook, it's the actual brand awareness and being a part of the communities where people are, and all this stuff I learned through but at least in part through the consulting and working with Lynn and working with others from my time at the SBDC.
That's great, thank you. So let's go back to your experience. And I think one thing we talked about a lot, I remember when we first started working together, was actually this issue about being a solo founder, right? I know you and I had numerous conversations around that, and coming to terms with, you can wear all hats for so long, but at some point in time, you need the right people in the right roles to really take it to that next level.
Yeah, and throughout my journey, I did have partners and hopefully what would have been co-founders, because I originally launched that first app with a buddy from MindBody, and about 3 months in, he seemed to lose interest, and so we cut off ties there. And then about 6 months before I joined the SBDC, I tried working with someone else for a month and a half, but same kind of thing. He lost interest after a bit of time. But at some point through my church, I met someone who didn't play board games, was not into marketing, but had a passion for trying things out and putting in the time and effort. And within like 2 or 3 months, he was like an expert on board games and had met and talked to every single publisher and designer and all the big influencers in the industry and became an expert. And it was like, I felt like I was falling behind at that point when he was doing all these things. So that was like hugely inspirational for me. It was like, as one horse, I could pull 8,000 pounds, but with two horses, you can pull 2,400 pounds. And I really felt like that was what it was like. We were just encouraging and spurring each other on to do more than we thought we could.
That's actually really interesting. We talk about that a lot. You're not just doubling the brain power, the work power. It's more than that, right? It just takes you to
Right.
that next level, which is what we encourage our startups to do when we ask them to set up advisory boards. Like you have these one-on-one conversations, but when you bring 3 to 5 experts in a room that have different areas of expertise, it just really takes it way up to that next level.
Yeah. I think the other thing that, besides the marketing and some other like areas of the business itself, was the investor strategy and trying to pitch and things. It was another big area that I got help with going through the program in the incubator. And Judy was a big help in like general advising and helping. And then the other big thing was all the other companies I was going through it with, because they were going through the same experience at different stages. So I could ask questions, show my pitch deck to them, and get feedback on it. And that was hugely helpful because the more I could practice, the better I would do when I'm actually pitching to the investors that I was going out and meeting.
Well, let's talk about that. So let's talk about your AngelCon experience.
Okay.
So what, I mean, at first, so why did you apply? Like, what were your thoughts when you applied? What, did you think you had a chance? Like what went through your head? Talk about the whole process at the start.
So I actually applied the year before, but that was like a week after I joined, and my business was pretty raw at that point. And so I didn't get past the first stage. But I did get to go to the event and see the other people pitching, and seeing De Oro specifically, like her pitch was amazing. I went on this emotional journey. And then once I was hooked on this is something that needs to be done, I saw the business there. And I thought that was a very compelling way to pitch. And seeing all the other ones as well was very helpful to see like different types of businesses and how they presented themselves. And through that experience, I quickly went around and changed up my pitch deck quite a bit. And then throughout the year, I worked on it several times. But the big experience going through this AngelCon was, uh, I think the difference obviously was I understood my business more. I had refined the pitch a lot better and had the practice leading up to it that made it successful, because I think the two biggest things are clarity in what I'm trying to do and what makes it investable. So why they'll get returns on their investments, and the fact that I have traction, both users and revenue, made it a lot easier to pitch something that is not an idea, but it's actually real and growing.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, do you regret having gone through that first process, or do you feel okay? No, it was totally worth it. I learned from that, and basically then worked on it for 12 months for to improve and to get to the next level to become investable, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely worth it because I think it was like $75 is easily worth it. I got to go to the event and like I didn't have to repay for the ticket, so that alone is worth it. It's the worth the ticket cost. But just the experience of seeing everyone there, and while I was there, I was trying to mingle with the investors that had come, and I got to know a lot of them and the way they think about things. And sitting in the audience, I could hear them commenting like, "Oh, that's a great business, but the price is too high," and just hearing their comments was very interesting.
Oh,
So
that's
that was
yeah, I didn't realize.
definitely worth it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's good feedback.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you won the prize. So what was, you had a plan. I know you had a budget for the use of those funds. And so how did it help Atlas Alpha winning AngelCon? Like what were the outcomes for you as a founder of Atlas?
Two major things have happened so far in terms of like big business things. So the first is that my co-founder had been working part-time for about 8 months. And so getting the funds allowed for him to leave and come and do this full-time with me. So that's the first major impactful thing, because although we were doing great and both working quite a bit, it makes it so much easier if we can just get things done together. And the second big thing is we're working on pretty much all the things that we had planned to work on, but the focus is a little different. Instead of focusing heavily, frantically even, on revenue and trying to drive up advertising costs and just plead for people to advertise on our site and sign up to be part of our affiliate program, we can focus on making the product better for the users and just help grow the base of who's using the platform, because ultimately that will lead to more advertisers and higher revenue. But it's the longer term play that if when we didn't have as much money, we needed the money right away. But now that we have some safety in the bank, we can work on things that grow us and create a better base. And so that's been the big thing. In terms of like business and features, we're launching a new community by the end of this month, and we're merging two of our website properties. We've already started doing that this week, and so we're seeing a lot of traffic coming from that, and a big event thing that we're doing. So and then also the 2 months after, we had our highest revenue month since
Oh, wow.
the company had grown. So it's been pretty fun because it gives
Uh,
us the freedom to try things. I think is the biggest thing is we can experiment with things that we couldn't before because we needed stability, and now we can try the things that will lead to bigger business opportunities. Is kind of the biggest thought that I have.
mhm. So do you mind sharing your monthly recurring revenue went from what to what from before AngelCon and those couple months later? Like what was the swing there?
So we're averaging around 8 to 9,000, and then we've gotten up to about 13,800 since then.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. So, and kind of what you're saying, what I love hearing is it sort of validates that whole thought process around lean startup, right? So you had your MVP, and once you
Mhm.
got the funding and you were able to get traction with the MVP, but then you were able to finally go back and refine that product to where how, what you would want it to be and look like and so on. But it does give some affirmation towards, yeah, MVPs are fine, like basic minimal features, just get it out there, right?
Right. And that's the nice thing about the fact that my product is mostly software at this point is I can build something and see if people like it. And a lot of my features that I do follows that same course. If things that I build, I do small pieces of it, like small versions. And 2 out of 5 are things that actually work, and then I develop them more fully, and the 3 that don't, I kind of just ignore them, and people don't use them anyway, so I eventually take them out. And this way I can really understand what the users are doing and lean into that a lot more.
That's great. So it's yeah, again, I love your thought process, Trent. You're so in tune with just testing and understanding, okay, do the users want it or not? Because at the end of the day, it's all about that demand. Am I solving a problem that they're having or something that they uh, are going to use and want to use? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest key there has been 2 things. The first is being or trying to be one of the ideal users. And so if I am someone who plays board games and enjoys it and is trying to use the website to use all the features, then I can actually feel what it's like and see, at least get a general sense for what is needed or what could be fun. And the other is I'm not the every type of user, so I have to talk to all my users. And so I talk to absolutely everyone. I try to email everyone that signs up for an account and get some feedback at least. And if I get a little bit, then I ask for more. And can I talk to you on the phone? And just want to hear about who you are and what you do. And those are the conversations that lead to the biggest changes and the biggest impacts in my app, and what leads to more people coming.
Thank you for saying that, Trent. That's huge. Like I think we need to take that quote and just put it somewhere so that everyone can see it all the time. It's a constant customer development. Like you're never done, right? You getting that feedback from your users.
Yeah, the more I do it, the more I see why it's necessary. Like the biggest unlock, the very first thing that really expanded my business was for about 3 months I've been working on this thing that had a really great launch and like people liked it, but then it was having difficulty with traction. But in talking with users, I eventually got someone who said, I want to have my wish lists and the list of things that I own and all these lists that they had from Amazon or from competing products on your website. Because I have like 300 things and I don't want to put those all in just to try your website out. Can I just have an import feature?
Ah,
And I had thought about it, but I was like, that's not a big deal because I wasn't someone who used the competing product. I didn't know how big a deal it was. And so when I built the feature, I saw that the competing product not only has lists that users can do, but they have reviews, they have comments, they have images, they have all this information that I had an equivalent for. And I have built this import system to give permission. Can I grab all your reviews, your images and things, and people could check and uncheck? And I went from about 7 reviews total across the 100,000 products we have to now, or within like a month after the import feature, we had 40,000 reviews. And
Oh,
then at this point, we have like 150,000 reviews. And it's primarily, it made our website look legitimate.
yeah.
And we had
Yeah.
all these images, reviews, and things. So that was like a huge, huge change to our business. And it's just because someone asked for it and I actually listened to them.
Oh my gosh, that's huge. That's a massive impact. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you didn't purchase any of these reviews. Like they're all legitimate
Yeah.
users. Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. Um, that's really, I love to hear that. So I just want to remind everyone who's on the call, if you have any questions for Trent, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll relay them to Trent directly. So also based on that, in that same vein, Trent, do you do a lot of A/B testing? Is that something that you do, that you engage in with a lot?
So I don't use any software for A/B testing, but I like there's a lot of great tools that you can like plug and play A/B testing. Um, Once I get closer and closer to product market fit, I think that'll become more and more important. But in this early stage, I just do a lot of testing of new features, like I mentioned, and it's because the product's so unrefined, even to this point. A lot of the things have some pretty solid foundation, but it's just I don't know like the small subtle differences of color and how that'll affect things. I don't think that'll have such a big effect. So I'm still working on building out the major features to get to product market fit. And at that point is when I can refine and grow based on specific A/B tests. Because that's more of like feature specific.
Mhm.
If I want people to use this chat function, should it be uh, done in this way where it auto updates per every 10 seconds or every 5 seconds? I could do tests between that and see if it makes a difference in how much people engage with it. Or if the feature is in the drop down menu or it's on its own, then how much more engagement will I have? But I'm not at the point where I have product market fit so that people like I'll see the big returns on that.
Mhm.
I need to get to a point where people are like overwhelmingly telling everyone else about this. And there's still some major things I think are missing from the product. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the community aspect. So that real structured A/B testing is coming, but it's not where I'm at yet. Just feature testing is what I'm doing now.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you still feel that you don't have total product market fit yet because you're doing so well, but
Right.
you're cognizant that there's still some progress to be made there. Yeah, yeah. Do you track? How about on the user experience side? Do you track? So you said you don't make those little very subtle changes, but do you track how your users are interacting with the website as a whole? Is that
Yeah.
something you're tracking?
Yeah. So through Google Analytics, we can see like the important things. I also build my own internal tools of like ad clicks and price clicks, and we could see people and how many comments they leave and posts they make and how much engagement there is. So we are tracking all that stuff. And so with every new feature, we're seeing does it have an actual impact in these things. So we're tracking all these to see like that's part of what leads to features either getting more fully developed or just left behind. If there's no additional engagement, I usually, if it's break even, I usually just don't do the feature anymore because that's additional things I have to maintain and fix and work on that didn't result in anything growing. So it's usually just the things that actually have a growth result that I work on more.
So what are those key performance indicators that you use to monitor where you're at month to month or even week to week?
The two North Star KPIs are monthly active users and revenue, because those are the most important parts of the business. As a social platform and marketplace, I need to make sure that there's tons and tons of people that are coming to talk about, find out about, and buy the products. And so I'm essentially basing everything I do off of monthly active users, which in turn drives revenue so that I can do more essentially, because revenue is the byproduct and not the main thing, but it's a pretty important part of the business.
Yeah.
So things that support it though are things we also track, like engagement on the forum, like views of the game page and how long they're there, how many people click on prices, and that's determining where we're putting prices on the page and things like that. So everything that leads to more engagement, more users are things that we're tracking, but the ultimate goal and metric that we're really tracking is monthly active users.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, so how active are you with on social media platforms? Which ones, if you do use them, which ones work best for you? And, for this type of marketplace, is that something that's is that key for your marketing efforts?
Yeah. So the basic concepts for social media is just be where your demographic is. And so most of the audience that we have comes from Reddit, comes from YouTube, a little bit from Twitter, and a little bit from Facebook. And so we kind of divvy up our time for each of those platforms. And we have a YouTube channel where we talk about and review products. We have Reddit where we post all of our new features, and my partner is in charge of content and community. So he's posting just different content, and not specifically like showing off our features, but just writing content about board games and the artists and the designers, and doing interviews and big things like that. And so producing content that's interesting to people that just happens to be on our platform. And so we don't spend much time on Instagram. We don't spend as much time on Facebook or Twitter. Those are much smaller. And definitely not TikTok or Snapchat, just because that's not where the audience is. And so we have like all the platforms covered, but we spend most of our time on the ones where people are spending their time on.
That's really interesting. So, that's not super common, like Reddit and YouTube. Like, most startups are on Instagram, and they are on Snap or whatever. So that's really interesting. YouTube and Reddit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, I have a question here from Johnny, who's asking, he said you used to do a ton of videos. I know you still do. But he's asking, are you still doing a lot of video content? Is that, how is that working for you?
So we don't do as much video content, and it was essentially one of the long-term tests we were trying. And it still seems like we won't get the big benefits until we get to 10,000 subscribers or something, once it's much, much larger. And so it's an interesting thing though, because even though it's not converting to more users, it became a offering that we could give to advertisers. If you want to be have your product reviewed on the channel, that's just part of the larger packages that we offer to make it more beneficial. So it had a byproduct that is beneficial, but the pace at which I was doing it before just wasn't sustainable, when the most important thing is the software itself. And so I wanted to focus on that and make it a platform where the 100 other channels are trying to compete and grow their channels on our platform is ideally what I want to do. But I felt like it was important to at least 3 months, 6 months, put a lot of time into it, because I felt like if I just do a month, then it's not really a proper test to actually give good legs to. And we're still refining, trying to see how much time we can put in and still get some good results from, and playing around with that, because the more we were going into it, the more quality I wanted from each video, and the more time it would take to edit. And it almost worked against myself that I wanted higher quality, better things, because it takes more time, and I don't have as much expertise in video. So I think I need to kind of go back to my very simple sit in front of a camera and talk, show the product from a top-down view, and then publish that on YouTube, because those are like an hour long from inception to on YouTube. Even though we get less views, it was so simple and easy, and the consistency I think is important, rather than like all this great cinematography that I'm trying to do now and swapping out lenses and cameras and things and lighting. It's not a significant change in the viewer count. So I'm I'm still experimenting with it.
Okay, extra time. Yeah. So I want to touch on something. I have another question from Johnny, and there's a question from Jeff too that I'll get to. But one thing I know, Trent, is you've set up some pretty focused rules around how you manage your time, and you're very again, you're super diligent about that. Like you just mentioned with the videos, like even though you get maybe less views spending an hour on something, it's still a better management of your time to get still some significant impact that just makes more sense.
Yeah.
I know you have a methodology around checking email.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a bit about how you manage your time, because I know you just started a young family, you've launched this startup, there's a lot going on in your life right now. So, and I know you've got a lot of strategies around time management.
Right. So the big understanding I have with how to manage things is that 4 box thing where you have importance on one side and immediacy on the other axis. And so things that are urgent and important are of course the things you work on first. Like my servers are down, I'm going to work on that immediately. And the next thing people typically work on is what's immediate but not important. And usually that's email or things like, for me, it'd be like bugs and or just tasks that I know I can do that don't take much thought, that are just right in front of my face. But the bigger and more important things are the things that are important and not immediate. And so those are the big goals that can move the business in big ways. And so for me, that's a new feature or a big marketing push or a partnership that needs time to develop. And I mean, the final quadrant is pretty obvious. The not immediate and not important things, like no one's going to do those anyways. And so it's really those two things that are like the on fire but not important things are the ones that most people spend time on. And the thing that most people don't spend time on are the not on fire but important still things that are usually not done because they're either too hard, like you don't know what to do to start and therefore you don't start, and you just like, I'll just do this other thing instead because
Yeah.
I don't know how to start it, or they don't have the resources or the time. And so I end up essentially, I love that understanding of things. And so I've been trying to model it by ignoring stuff until it's on fire, which tends to be email. I ignore a lot of email unless it's on fire or it's a customer. And that works pretty well. If something is so important that I need to jump on it, like it related to SBDC, like Judy's called me before and said, "Can you get on this?" And then or Liz is really making sure that I'm going to be here for coffee and conversation, and sends 3 emails. Like then I see it enough that I need to answer it. And so I think in some ways that can definitely hurt me because that's why I was so bad at customer service with the board game business, because I was so focused on the bigger picture and not the customer service on like shipping games like today instead of tomorrow, because tomorrow is always another day away. And so it works better when I'm in software, because if I need to do something, I can do it quickly. So I think it's something where I've gone a little too far in the extreme, but it's something that's helped me grow all the biggest, most important features of what I've been working on.
Working for you. It might frustrate us poor lay people who want a response to an email.
Right. Yeah, I think I just need to do it in a way that my customers need it to be done. And that's why I'm not doing board games anymore, because I was not serving the customers well, and that was affecting my business. But software I do very well in.
Yeah. And also sometimes it's a question of hiring the people for specific tasks, right? This when you realize, okay, that actually is important. My customers do need to be satisfied, but I need to build up the bandwidth to be able to support that. And it's not going to be my job, because that's not
right.
So we'll go to the one more marketing question and a couple of funding questions. So Johnny was asking, when you sell ads, be it the ones that you put on your YouTube videos, do you do it directly or indirectly? So I'm not sure what he means by indirectly, but maybe
I could probably interpret that.
Yeah.
So on YouTube specifically, you can have Google ads that are like YouTube ads that roll before. And as a channel with 1,000 subscribers, I qualify for that, which I don't do because I do it directly. So I'm actually going and being the sales guy and asking publishers, do you want to advertise? And I have a page on my website, Board Game Atlas /advertise. And we've got 4 tiers of advertising. You just do a banner ad, which I built the network for myself instead of doing Google ads as well. And then you can do a partnered giveaway with us. And so that allows you to actually have a product and interaction, and they have to go to your website. So giveaways, we do YouTube reviews of products and things. And so with each of these offerings, it's an increasing amount of advertising spend, but you get more out of it essentially. And so I do a lot of direct advertising and don't do it through YouTube's ad platform or Google's ad placement platform because I want to both control all the ads that are on the platform and I want to make it look like it's part of it as well because it's typically pretty jarring and eye-catching. All the animated ads or even the banner ads that are really long, they always feel out of place. And what I admire about Facebook's ad network is it never feels out of place, but I can always see it. And so it's not interrupting or disrupting my current experience with the platform. And so I built a similar way to create ads that you can see if you want, but you can ignore if you want as well. And it's always going to be within the guidelines of the community because I'm choosing those. And the other benefit is much higher margins. So I can charge a lot more and make a lot more through it.
That's super smart. I really like that approach. Yeah. Because to your point, like sometimes there's certain sites you go on, it is jarring, the pop-ups and the, it's not, it doesn't add to the experience at all. Yeah.
Right.
So Jeff's question. So back to AngelCon, his question was, why do you think you won versus the other contestants? So what do you think took you to that, took you to the winning spot?
I think there's a few reasons. And I think the 2 main ones are I had traction, I had other investors already. And so in 2 ways, there's like people saw things were happening. They saw that I had users, I had revenue. So that was one indicator that there's some possibility of success. And the other was I had other investors beforehand. I had about $130,000 invested through other angels and friends and family and current venture group. And so having them as part of the essentially saying like this is something that other people thought were investing in gave confidence to the AngelCon investors. And the fact that I had been talking with Chet Brandenburg, who's the CTO of MindBody or former CTO, and a few others, had just solidified that I have good potential. And then besides that, I think I mean, that felt like the main things that led to people investing in my company. But the other one was during due diligence, everyone's talking to like they're in different groups, talking to all the different companies, and my assumption is that through that they saw that not only was I just saying all these things, but it actually was backed up by all the data of Google Analytics and the revenue from our accounts and things, and just the conversation on potential and where we're going and the reasons why and when we would change the plan probably made sense. And they're talking together as angels across companies.
So I'll totally back you up on that 100%. I think when investors, it is a key factor. When they do due diligence, they realize you have all the data to back up what you were saying. So you're not making, you're not being salesy and amplifying the information. It's really there. Also to your, kudos to you too, Trent, for being very transparent, very responsive, sharing information in a way that was very open, and you built trust. I mean, you definitely built trust by doing that during the diligence process for sure. Yeah. Another, actually, a great question. I like this question from Jeff. He's asking, in what areas of your business did you spend a lot of time when, in retrospect, had you hired someone to do those tasks or to fill in that certain role, would have been a better solution?
It's a good question. So
Yeah.
most of the time, I feel like it's important to at least do some part of everything myself, so I have an understanding of if I hire someone, what they should be doing. And some of the greatest things that I did that I felt like model that was doing all the database entry. There's a lot of manual entry stuff because we have this massive database with all the information about every single game. So I did a lot of that myself initially, and then hired someone who does it so much better and has a bigger passion for that specific thing than I do. And so Carol is my first like big contractor that she works on this about 40 hours to 60 hours a month. And by me doing it myself, I built a ton of tools so that it was much easier and faster to do it. And when Carol came in, she came and did it in such a more meticulous way and made it much higher quality, brought it from 90% quality to 99% quality, which me as the I like to do things very quickly and do a huge chunk of it at a time. I lose out on that 10%, but I move on to the next thing. And I've hired Carol to get us to that 99.9%. I think in terms of I should have just hired is probably like the clearest one is my financials and things. But essentially I couldn't because I didn't have any money. And
Right.
so through the due
It,
diligence, I
yeah,
got recommendations and that's been very helpful. So if I could have, I would have, or maybe I wouldn't have because I wouldn't have known, but definitely should have. And so in terms of financials and things, that was the biggest thing that I needed to hire out for.
yeah. No, that's really, really, really good feedback. And recognizing that there's some areas that maybe you don't get to and that you let sort of slack a little bit, but it's because you don't have the interest for it, or you just don't have the passion for it, or and there are people, and understanding that um, uh, for example, I'll talk to one of my flaws, like, uh, I'm not the best tracker. That's definitely a weakness, not a strength. But I do look at data, and I like to look at data and see what it says and get the macro vision. But I'm not the
Right.
micro person, right? I'm not going to
Right.
get into the weeds on it. And then you hire someone who loves that, and it's really hard to understand that someone would love that when it's not your
Right.
strength. But once you're able to recognize that and let them take it on, it just makes for an amazing team. It's just phenomenal. It just takes you to that next level of being able to accomplish some big things. Yeah.
Yeah. My co-founder does a lot of that too. All the marketing, all the content management, and just the spring on of people talking in our forums is all him because even though I built this essentially social platform, I don't actually like to comment and chat about things. I was just doing it because I was forcing myself to because I built the thing, but he loves it and he does such a much better job. It
Totally.
makes it amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no, exactly. It makes a world of difference. Yeah. 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 Actually, on that note, there was one more question from Johnny, who was asking, how did you know how to price your ads, like for the marketing piece? Like, how did you have any idea as to what the ranges were on pricing?
So that's another set of experiments. I got my basic understanding of pricing by talking to a lot of people. So I not only talk to customers, but I also talk to other people in the industry who are selling ads on their different pages and things. And so I got an idea of how much people are willing to pay and then just tried out some prices. And, if I had too many people advertising, I would just double the price and then that would help. But sometimes a few times I realized that even after doubling, I still had too many. So I double it again or like increase it in some capacity. And so I'm at the point now where I've grown it to a point that I have less, like the peak revenue has dropped a little bit. So I need to lower the price of demand and supplies at the right range. And then the way I find the people that I'm trying to advertise to is essentially the same as when I was building the social part of this. I go to where my users are, where the demographic is. I need to do the same thing because I have a two-sided business where I have users and businesses. I have to go where the businesses are. And they're essentially like the publishers of the products, the manufacturers, the retailers, all these different spots. I just go and try and find the owners or the CEOs or the presidents of all these things and talk to them. And not just trying to talk to them to sell them on my platform, just to talk to them and understand what problems they have. Because if I can understand the problems, maybe one of the things that I have will solve it, or maybe I have an idea on what to build to solve it in the future. And so that's been an interesting part of how to find my customers, has just been talking to them, asking what are your biggest problems, and maybe not directly, but just asking why did they get into this and
Mm,
what's their plan for the future, because why they're passionate is helpful for me to know, like what they're focused on, and what their future plans are is helpful for me to know. uh, like they'll probably describe they want to be in this spot and they're in this spot, and so there's definitely something that's not getting in there, and so that'll help me uncover what are the biggest problems and what are potential ways for me to help them get to that point, and I
mhm.
can make something or do something for them.
And so from okay, last question around marketing is how did you find your clients at that level? Like how do you know who to reach out to offer pricing models and so on and so forth?
In my business, I just needed to find out where all the products were coming from and where they're going and what platforms they're going on. And so in the board game industry, as a physical product, they all have a publisher behind them. And to launch the game, they do some form of marketing. And I found the most common form of that is on Kickstarter. And so on Kickstarter,
Mm,
that's where between 8 to 12 publishers launch their games every single day.
wow, that's crazy.
And it is crazy. The other big one is conventions, which is not as automatable and is much more difficult and pricey to get into. So I focused on Kickstarters, and so every single game that launches, I check to see, does it have any sort of moderate success on the first day, a few thousand, or sometimes some even hit their goal, and I message maybe 2 to 4 of those 12 and ask it and like say, wow, I love this game, this art here looks amazing, and I played something similar before. I just wanted to reach out because I own these websites, have all this traction, are you interested in advertising? And so it's like 3 sentences to start a conversation, and then if they follow up, I can send them the ad page that I built and they can see all the pricing, and I even made it so that there's a preview of what their ad would look like based on their Kickstarter. And that's how I get most of my advertisers, because ideally I'd be at the point where I'm known in the industry and people come to me, but I'm not at that point yet. So I got to go search and find right now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, so Trent, we'll wrap up with one last question I'm going to ask you. So, um, what are your goals for the next 12 months? Like, what are your maybe 12 months to even maybe 3 years out? Like, what are your next big goals?
So to the goals, I'll do like immediate and future. So for this month, I own 2 website properties that are very related: boardgameatlas.com and boardgameprices.com. And in some ways they're unique, but in a lot of ways they compete with themselves. And so I'm merging the 2 properties together right now, and started that last week. And the beta is going well, and we're getting some good feedback. And so the hope is that once we do that, we can double or triple our organic traffic and uh, see some growth there. But in parallel, I'm also working on our next community that we're launching with the equivalent feature set of community discussion, product database, and connected to retailers. Because this is not for board games only, because every hobby or sport or activity has people who love talking about stuff,
Mm.
then looking it up, and then buying it. If you want to make a purchase, that's always the same 3 steps everyone goes through. And so 2 weeks ago, we looked through about 450 different hobby sports activities, and I
Only for
got them. There, I probably could have gotten a bigger list actually, but I looked at the market caps for each of them to kind of cut out a huge chunk and narrowed it down to about 40 that seemed interesting. Me and my partner uh, worked through all those. After we get to 40, we looked at community size, perceived product size amounts, like can we make affiliate sales, is there enough products for that, and narrowed it down to about 20. And then we looked at our expertise and our desires and what's unique to Slow and how we can do that, and then narrowed it down to 5 communities that we wanted to launch this next product for. Because the ultimate goal is to make this kind of like Reddit, where there's communities that you can discuss things, but in a much more powerful way. And so we want to do a next fund of rounding probably at the beginning of next year or maybe in the second quarter. And so one of the big risks is this will only work for board games. And so we wanted to de-risk by launching it in new communities. And so the top 5 we looked at that met all the criteria were home improvement, crafting, bicycling, photography, and wine. And through home improvement and crafting seemed like the community side would be phenomenal, but the product side would be super hard because there's so many smaller niches and products there. Photography, again, seemed great from content, but also really kind of difficult from a moderation standpoint and server cost standpoint to just jump into. And so that left biking and wine. And when looking at those, when we're looking at community and organic traffic and things like all the metrics that we're trying to see and compare against, wine as an industry is 10 times bigger at least than biking, even though biking is a very large industry as well. So we're going into wineatlas.com or vinoatlas.com. And so I've been doing a whole bunch of research, buying stuff, and preparing the database that we're hoping to launch by the end of this month. And then that'll be the first community, and we're going to learn a whole bunch, launch into either biking or photography as the next one. And then in the next 6 months, trying to get into 5 new communities and de-risk and grow our community that way.
Verticals, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's very, very exciting. Great to see you branching out into these new verticals. Yeah. I know it was definitely, it was in your pitch deck, and you're implementing. That's super cool. Thanks, Trent. Well, I think I'm going to check to see if any more questions. Just if anyone has questions in our attendee group, feel free to jump in. And in the chat, Olivia has posted the link to Board Game Atlas, so check it out. We're very proud of you, Trent. You've accomplished so much the last couple of years. It's been really so rewarding working with you. Thank you. So glad you were part of our program, and it's just awesome to see you move forward and continue to grow, and yeah, we're very proud of you.
Thank you. And thank you, Judy, for all your help and support, and then the whole team as well. It's been really helpful.
Thank you. Well, thanks for making the time this morning, Trent. It's great talking with you. You shared lots of fantastic information. Thank you so much, and have a great day and have a great week, everyone. Before we leave, my apologies. I do have to give you a quick update on our next coffee and conversation. Will be with Jeff Bocan. He's the partner at Okapi, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Venture Capital. I do know Jeff. He's awesome. He's an angel and venture investor in startups. And so he's going to give us some great stories about all his experiences, his startup, talk about his startup portfolio. But great guy. I really recommend that you attend our session December 9th. And then if you want to sign up for Coffee and Conversation, again, there's a link in the chat right there. You can sign up right away for December 9th and put it on your calendar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, Trent. Take care.
Yep. Bye.